Alive and Well STL is a presentation of the St. Louis Regional Health Commission with the first decade review of health status report to build a healthier St. Louis, and RareGem Productions. Power up with the positive. Learn more at oneraregem.com. That's ONERAREGEM.com.
Support for Alive and Well STL comes from Beyond Housing, helps entire communities become better places to live. Learn more at beyondhousing.org.
The Regional Health Commission works in partnership with regional health sector advocates and stakeholders to improve healthcare access, reduce health disparities, and improve health outcomes for the uninsured and the underinsured in St. Louis City and County.
Alive and Well STL with Bethany Johnson-Javios, CEO of the St. Louis Integrated Health Network.
Today on the show, we're talking about men's health and whatever else comes up in conversation.
And men rarely establish a positive relationship with a doctor, as opposed to a female. We have our rational thoughts and our unemotional thoughts where women tend to embrace someone who's there to care for them.
But the myths are myths that come out of real experiences. They're myths nonetheless, and they're uninformed, but they come from real experiences. I mean, the whole mistrust, but I think we do have a responsibility to start addressing those myths and informing them with correct information so people can be better informed and make good choices about our health and our well-being.
We'll be right back.
RareGem Productions, proudly presenting, promoting, and producing positive programs.
Pastor Francis, share with us, what does it mean to you to be alive and well in STL?
To be alive, wow. For me, it's a great time to be here in St. Louis and to be alive and to be active, engaged, involved in these types of conversations, to be aware and fully functional. And my health, of course, is a huge part of that, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, just to really be engaged and in tune into what's really going on in and around my community. So for me, when I hear that, to be alive and in St. Louis means to be fully at my optimum and in, functioning at what I consider to be my best, but also being very much conscious about what's happening in my community and being a part and engaged in that.
Outstanding.
Alive and Well STL.
This is the day that the Lord has made. And listeners, I got to tell you, the presence of the Lord is already in the room and we haven't even started yet. So you got to tune in for this show. I am Bethany Johnson-Javios, CEO of the St. Louis Integrated Health Network and host of Alive and Well STL, sponsored by the St. Louis Regional Health Commission. Today in studio, I'll be speaking with Pastor Rodney Francis at Washington Tabernacle Missionary Baptist Church, and Anthony Davis, a 30-plus year veteran in criminal justice here in St. Louis. Both are members of the Community Advisory Board of the Regional Health Commission. So thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Happy to have you. Today on the show, we're talking about men's health and whatever else comes up in conversation. According to a report recently released by the Commonwealth Fund, men are about half as likely as women to seek regular medical care. So, Pastor Francis, to get us started, I want to hear your opinion. What's happening on the local level? What's going on?
Yeah, and I tend to think that men are not socialized from the very beginning to interact with the medical community as much. Young ladies are encouraged and by just biological the nature to interact with the medical community much earlier than we do. We're not encouraged to go. Only time we have to go is when there's some physical requirement or when you're physically ill, your parent take you. But in terms of preventive maintenance, it's just not something that we as men are socialized to do as a part of our American culture. And then we have the African-American cultural nuances with the suspicion of the medical community that comes into that. And so we have a couple of dynamics going on when you talk about African-American male interaction with the healthcare system.
So one of the terms that the medical community loves to use and is trying to shift is that word compliance. Talk about examples of medical compliance that starts very young in a young man's life that perhaps is why this mistrust is coming up now. Anthony, you gave me some examples earlier.
Yeah, medical imposed compliance. You see it early, and I think the first evidence of that is through childhood immunizations, okay? And being honest, I know that there are people out in the audience that will admit that if it wasn't for the fact that immunizations were mandatory to attend school, how many of our children would actually be immunized? Okay. That's one instance where we are kind of forced to comply for our betterment. Okay. The next one is, again, with children, young children that participate in sports, organized sports. It's pretty much a requirement that they have a physical exam before participating. There have been several instances where previously undiagnosed heart conditions have surfaced and other abnormalities due to the fact of an initial and very basic physical examination. And then, as I talked about earlier, penal institutions, inmates and offenders receive full medical benefits and services, including dental, while they're incarcerated. And that's almost a forced situation because of the nature of the beast. But following that incarceration, again, treatment and medical services pretty much subside for them.
So is there a stigma associated with going to medical care? What is that about?
I think the stigma is more so connected with acknowledging that you're not strong enough to handle whatever your sickness is for a lot of men. I think that's more the stigma. And then there may be this thing of weakness by going to a medical doctor and seeking attention and being preventive and proactive about that. There is a part of that, I think, that comes into play with a lot of men psychologically. You know, it takes a lot for us to admit that I'm not strong enough to deal with this, or I can handle this on my own. There's a lot of that going on.
In preparation for this show, I did some informal interviewing with friends of mine, men, and just kind of questioned them about, medical health and treatment and wellness and what have you. A very good friend of mine said something that I thought was very interesting, and that was actually supported by some other research that I had done. But it appears that many black men simply distrust doctors and the medical system. I can't tell you why that is the case, but I know that is the case. In speaking to them, I often hear men say, I don't like hospitals. You go to a hospital to die. I don't like doctors. I can't afford a doctor, or I don't want to deal with the long lines of a free clinic. They come up with various excuses not to seek medical care. And at that point, may even tend to start self-medicating or using home and family remedies to treat themselves as opposed to seeking professional medical services.
So my question then is, how does that play out if there's mistrust of the medical system? Now we have the Affordable Care Act, or what we embracingly say Obamacare, is available for people who never had access before. How are we going to reconcile that so we're encouraging people now to access a system that they didn't have access to and don't trust? What do we do about that?
Instead of calling it Obamacare, I'd prefer to call it Obama Cares.
Nice. Right? Okay.
So, yeah, I think that we're talking about some serious psychological shifts from not having access to health care, not being able to afford health care, and then culturally not being encouraged to seek it, to now is readily available, is all but free, and you need to do this in order to stay well. It's going to take some serious psychological shifts in order for us to nurture a generation of men who now are proactive and think it's okay and it's normative to know what their PSA number is, and to know what their blood pressure number is, and to know those things just as well as they know their belt size, or, those kinds of things that we men know about. So it's going to take some effort from grassroots, from family. It's going to take the women in our lives. Traditionally, it has been the women who have pushed us men into caring for ourselves and caring for our bodies. And usually the argument falls down, well, when you're not here, we're going to be going on. And those kinds of conversations really encourage us men to think twice about, well, I think I want to be around. But we're going to need the women who are our husbands and our sisters, the brothers, and you need to encourage the nephews and the sons, and you got to encourage them to go and seek health care and not to see that there's something that is weak or not a good thing for their well-being.
What's the faith community doing about these issues, and what can we do if we haven't started? What's your advice?
Faith communities can do a lot more than what is being done. I think when we in the faith community, through our churches and our houses of faith, can begin to once again see ourselves as the center of information dispensation into the community, as the place where people are gathered in one place in one time, and you can share this information. I think that's important. We need to reclaim that. And so some of the things I think that churches can do to kind of, bring the attention to this for our men, particularly with our men's ministries and so forth, is make sure that our men are engaging in the community conversations around them. At our church, our men participate in the prostate walk. We encourage all the men to go get your PSAs and to engage and be informed about that. We have health fairs. You want to make sure that you have health fairs. And if you have to have a prayer breakfast with the health fair, then have a prayer breakfast and a health fair. Make sure that those topics and those issues are addressed and that the pastor addresses them, right? Give the pastor some talking points. Do the research. Hand the pastor. Pastor just mentioned it. Just references from the pulpit. Encourage all the men to do this. Putting stuff in the bulletin about the facts. You know, at Washington Tabernacle, we try every month that there is some kind of a social awareness that everybody needs to be aware of. And so we make sure that that is a part of our worship experience. We see that as a part of a responsibility as well. Support groups, hosting support groups, being a part of support groups at your church. And moreover, I think one of the more powerful statements can be made, putting some money in the church budget to support some health issue that's related to the well-being of our community. Put the money where the mouth is. Wherever the money is, that's where the priority will be. Put some money in the budget to support an organization that's doing the kind of work that we believe is the right work for the health and well-being of our community. Those things send messages because it comes up at the church budget meeting. Why are we giving this to the prostate cancer health organization? And that gives an opportunity to say, because we believe that the health and well-being of our men is just that important. Just some things that can be done.
In wrapping up, you shared so much richness. We have a lot of work to do, but can you paint your vision for the future? In St. Louis, Black men are living up to their full potential. Paint the picture of what that looks like. What's the hope that we're aspiring to get to in St. Louis on this issue? Reverend, what would you say?
Yeah, well, when I think of it, in terms of what I imagine, and being a man of faith, mine is a world of ideas, of imagining and always trying to paint that ideal world. But I do imagine a world, a community where men are healthy and whole, and men of purpose who every day when they wake up trying to live out their purpose and their destiny and their calling, and they're aware of that and they're conscious of that, and every step and decision they make is towards that. And in order for that to be, you got to be healthy and whole, right? You can't be at your optimum if there are health issues. You know, the Creator can't use you creatively if you're not at your best. And so I want to see men whole and well and physically fit so that they can be used by the Creator to fulfill their purpose and their destiny before they transition. Don't die before your time. If you're here for a reason and a purpose. If you're still here, you're here for a reason and for a purpose. Every day is another day, another chance to start from the beginning. This day is the first day of a new beginning. It's an opportunity to start from right here, right now, to say that I want to be the best that I can be because I know that God has a purpose for me. And that may start with me first and foremost going to see my doctor to get a physical, and beginning right there.
The content of this show is going to change somebody's life listening. And I told you listeners that if you tuned in, you would be moved by something in order to act. And I kept my word. Is there anything else in closing that you want to share before we wrap up?
I want to issue a challenge to the ladies, the women, the mothers in our lives. We men can be very stubborn, but we need you to push us, kick us if you have to, out the door to the doctor, make the appointment. Your sons, your nephews, your brothers, your husbands, all the men in your lives that you know are not taking care of their bodies as they should, encourage them. Shepherd them there if you have to. We need you ladies. We need you women. We need you to support us in making sure that we care for ourselves. And with your support, with the support of the women in our lives, I believe that we could really make a dent in this area.
Thank you so very much for everything that you've shared, all that you've said, how you shared a bit of yourself. And thank you, everyone, for joining us for another episode of Alive and Well STL. For more information about men's health services available in the community, you can visit us online at aliveandwellstl.com. We will be back again next week.
Alive and Well STL. Thank you for joining us today. For resources available, go to aliveandwellstl.com. If you have more questions about the program, need help, or want to connect, please call the message box at 314-333-8369. The Regional Health Commission with Chief Executive Officer Robert Friend Jr. committed to providing a detailed review of change over the past decade in 14 leading health indicators for the city and county of St. Louis. The first decade review of health status report, an update to building a healthier St. Louis. Discover the narrative, the data, and celebrate the progress already made to improve healthcare access and reduce health disparities in our region. Learn more at stlrhc.org. Alive and Well STL is another positive production of RareGem Productions. Thanks for listening.